it's cringy. It's cringy. Ooh, entrance. Ooh, I don't like it. I am the rock against which... Is it mass or moss? I want to say moss, but I think it's mass. Her entrance? Really? Okay. It's less offensive, but at the same time, it's disgusting. Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome back. I'm Elizabeth. This is Reading Riley, where we like to read Riley, not take ourselves too seriously, and have some fun with books. And today we're going to be talking about A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. Is it mass or moss? I want to say moss, but I think it's mass. Anyway, if you've ever seen my channel before, you know I have an obsession, and it's
unhealthy.
We're switching to wine. I want to talk a little bit about this book. I'm going to try to do it spoiler-free at the beginning, and then I'm going to go into spoilers. I'm not going to discuss every single plot line of this book because it's immense. And I just kind of want to give you my thoughts as I read it and kind of my opinions about generally how I feel about this book. I think I'm going to give it 5 stars. I finished it today and I have been thinking about it all day ever since. And I love it. I mean, it's quintessential Sarah J. Maas. But why do I love it? Why do I love it? Ah, that question's harder. Because there are some super cringy parts. The way she describes the sex, I don't know if I've been... Okay, here's the thing. I just finished the Brown Sisters series by Talia Hibbert, and at first I was shocked by that language as far as the steamy sex scenes went, and now going back to Sarah J. Maas, I almost prefer the way Talia Hibbert describes them because Sarah J. Maas uses language that is more, it's less offensive, but at the same time, it's disgusting. I don't know how many times she referred to Nesta's lady bits as
Her entrance?
Or
her sex?
And I don't recall her using that language in the previous books, though I'm sure she did, and I just kind of was fine with it then. But now, in my new perspective, in my new human person, it's weird to me. Her entrance? Really? Ugh, it's cringy. It's cringy. Ooh, entrance. Ooh, I don't like it. If you've never heard of this series, if you've never heard of this author, this is the 4th book in a series of A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. The first book surrounds our protagonist, Feyre, who her and her 2 sisters live with their father in a world where it is divided into 2, and the humans live on one side and the Fae live on the other side. They used to have some wealth, but their mother died and their father had fallen into hard times, very hard times. Feyre had promised her mother on her deathbed that she would take care of her family. When everyone else gave up, she decided to go ahead, venture forth, learn how to hunt, and feed her family. So she does this, and one day she goes out into the woods in the snow and she sees a wolf. She kills it. Turns out it is a fairy, and as punishment for this, she is sent to the other side of the wall to live with the Fae and pay her debt to the fairy society. The 4th book follows one of her sisters, Nesta. Without giving away any kind of spoilers, I will just say that Nesta is an unlikable character, and this book explores her personal growth and her character growth to deal with some trauma that she has been going through and come out on the other side. I want to talk about this cover really quickly. They have rebranded with this book. Apparently there will be 2 more books in the series as well, and they're rebranding it to try to give it a more adult feeling and more adult vibe. And I have to say that as far as fantasy book covers go, I'm disappointed in general. Adult fantasy book covers, and this is no exception. Why does it have to be uglier because it's adult fantasy? And why is that a theme? I feel like we're starting to move out of this, but I don't agree with so many fantasy covers. I feel like there's a certain aesthetic I'm not on board with this. Just because it's adult doesn't mean it has to be ugly, right? Am I right? Like, who's with me on that? This book is going to deal with themes of trauma, humanity, figuring out what is humanity, friendship, found family, ways in which we heal. I want to give you all trigger warnings and content warnings if you are thinking about reading this book. If you are triggered by sexual abuse or rape scenes. There's not an actual rape scene, but it is described. And also complications with labor and birth are going to be another trigger warning here. So if you are triggered by that, you may want to stay away from this book, just to give you a heads up. In the 3 books before, we follow Feyre's perspective, and this is the first book in which we are following Nesta's perspective. So the entire view of this world and these characters is kind of flipped, and you see it from a completely different view, which is really interesting. And from here, I'm going to go on into spoilers. So if you have not read this book, if you have not read any of the other books in the series, then maybe get the fuck out. I'm just kidding. Maybe leave now and read the books and then come back, and then we can chat. The beginning of this book is an episode of intervention, and this is an intervention. And then the end of the book is the Hunger Games. Welcome to the 119th Hunger Games. And I've heard a lot of people draw that comparison to Hunger Games, and it's exactly what I felt as I was reading it. May the odds be ever in your favor. So I completely agree with that. We learn more about the Archeron mother and her kind of effect on Nesta's personality. So you really dive deeper into Nesta's personality and why she is the way that she is. And her mother definitely had an influence on that. It seemed like Nesta was always kind of a mama's girl, and then Elaine and Feyre were kind of daddy's girls. And so when their mother died, Nesta was kind of left to deal with her grief in a way that the other 2 girls could not really understand. And her mother had kind of pushed her to be a lady of society and to manipulate and climb the social ladder. And this is how she came to be the way she is. This book is more character driven. There's not as much plot as the other books in the series, but I'm fine with that because there's enough. I'm not even going to go into the plot except for maybe a couple parts at the end. I'm just going to talk about Nesta and her journey. Nesta is dealing with the trauma and kind of PTSD of mostly losing her father and how she lost him in the battle against Highburn, and she feels like she should have done something. She could have, and she should have done more to try to save her father. And she has this resentment against him where she didn't treat him right because she didn't feel like he tried to be a parent when they were in need. And then when she heard from someone else that he had been that to them, it set her off even more because she thought, well, why can he be that for them and he couldn't be that for us? And then he dies before they could resolve any of this, and his neck is snapped. And so from that moment on, anytime she is near a fire and hears the crackling of logs, she associates that with her father's neck cracking and retreats back into herself. She's also dealing with her trauma from being taken into the cauldron and made into Fae, and dealing with how she kind of feels like she's lost her humanity. The way that she deals with it is by trying to forget and not deal with any of these emotions. And so she drinks and she screws and she goes to taverns and listens to music and spends all of the night court's money. Basically wants to not feel. She wants to flatline. She wants to not feel anything. So in the course of grieving her humanity in a literal sense, she loses her humanity in a figurative sense. This story is kind of her coming back to that, and while she is Fae, she gains back her humanity through strife and through perseverance and building her own strength and meeting people and letting herself be a little bit more vulnerable a little bit at a time. And it is frustrating throughout the book because she relapses over and over again. And you're just like, why, Nesta? Just be honest, just be open. And for me, like if anything, I'm over communicative. And so by her not telling people this, for me as a reader, it's frustrating, but I understand what she's going through, and nobody has the same trauma and nobody deals with trauma in the same way. So you can only go along with her and experience it with her as she does. Obviously, her and Cassian end up together and we love them. We love Cassian in this, or at least, you know, I do. Cassian is her rock. Cassian has loved her since the moment he met her, and he doesn't have like a character arc like Nesta does in this book, but he is steady and strong and true and there for her. And no matter how hard she pushes back, he just keeps pushing back against that, pushing back against that. And it's lovely how he is the strength that she needs. I should mention the steam. I didn't get into that. The steam. It's good. I mean, I got into the language, but aside from that, y'all, it was good. I am the rock against which the waves crash. More like the rock against which Cassian crashes. You know what I'm saying? Her family comes together to stage this intervention and say, look, we gave you a chance to do it and you're not, and you're screwing off your life. So now we're going to make you feel something. And so Feyre tells her she has to live in the House of Wind and she has to work at the library and train with Cassian. She tries to resist this, but eventually gives in. And the House of Wind is really cool because it's her friend, but it turns out it's her magic. When they end up having to perform the blood rite, they all tell their full story to each other, and it's so beautiful. I cried a lot. I just thought it was so lovely how Nesta finally got to the place where she could be vulnerable, and she had these two other women who had gone through trauma as well that made her feel like she could finally let that out, be strong for them. And then when she sends them up the hill, up the mountain, and she stays behind knowing that it's probably going to mean her imminent death, the self-sacrifice in that, when she finally learned that she actually wants to live, but she's going to sacrifice that because she wants to help her friends because they mean that much to her. Beautiful. Oh, I also cried when the house showed her its heart, but it's actually Nesta's heart. Ah, oh, love that. Where is Lucien? Where is Elaine? They are not in this book. Are they going to have their own book? Please let Elaine have her own book because I'm very bored with her right now, and she needs to have some kind of backbone. She needs to have some kind of character. I mean, she is so flat. She's kind and she's generous, and you know, she's sweet and simple, and not to say that she's not smart, but she needs to evolve as well. And so I'm interested to see if Elaine's going to have her own book. I loved the whole aspect of the Valkyries. I guess it's like yoga, where it's like this mind, soul, spirit connection, as well as their Illyrian training, fighting training. And it was really cool that they kind of came together in this way. And that's really what helped Nesta ground herself and learn to breathe and learn to see where this emotion was coming from and face it and let it go. And I thought that was lovely. And the whole thing with the Valkyries, how they kind of reinvented them and brought them back, and they were kind of the rebirth of the Valkyries. Valkyrian Valkyries. Some people have said that they don't like Rhys in this book, but I still love Rhys in this book, and here's why. We're not seeing this from Feyre's perspective. We're seeing it from Nesta's perspective. Nesta's not swoony over him like Feyre is, like we are, okay? But this is also not, you know, Rhys has always been overprotective, but this is not sexy overprotective Rhys. This is daddy Rhys. This is daddy overprotective Rhys. Oh yes, they're pregnant. I guess we should probably talk about that because Feyre, we risk losing Feyre in this book. And I guess that is kind of the climax of the book, is the most pivotal point.
Of course, it's about Feyre.
Because I kind of wish, well, it's about Nesta too, because Nesta tells Feyre that she loves her for the first time. And she gives up her power in order to save Feyre and the baby. And I think she builds that bond with Rhys again. She found a way to save her family and to let Feyre into her life and into her feelings. Everyone knew the entire time that she loved her sisters and that she loved Cassian, but she was so unwilling to admit it, so unwilling to let herself be vulnerable and let that out. And we finally, at the end, when it's risking the life of all three of them, she is able to finally say, I love you, take the power back, take it back, take it back, take it back, and let me save you. And in doing so, she's really saving herself, because she's realizing that she has everything that she could ever want, and that she's been so stubborn and been denying herself happiness for so long. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was great, and I cannot wait for the next one. I'm interested to see more from Elaine and Lucien, Azrael, Morgan. Like I said, I didn't really want to get into the plot of it. I really just wanted to talk about Nesta as a character and kind of what she's going through, because that's really what drew me to this, which is surprising because I tend to be a plot-driven reader. But I felt like the plot is like the catalyst that pushes the characterization forward, and there was just enough there. It's like a foundation, right? And it's pushing her, and there was just enough there for me to feel like the pace was moving while also falling deep in love with Nesta as a person and her soul and coming to understanding her and her motivations and her vulnerabilities and her stubbornness and her, rancor. That's about all I have. If you enjoy this content, please remember to like, subscribe. Let me know if you've read this. If you're still here, I hope you have, unless you enjoy spoilers, and that's fine too. But I appreciate you all, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Don't forget, life is short, so read Riley. Cheers. That's all.